In Memories, Dreams, Reflections, Jung says,
the doctor is effective only when he himself is affected. Only the wounded physician heals. Jung named and identified this archetype of the wounded healer, implying that we cannot separate the healer from the wounded one.
and as Sue was saying, in fact, this seems to be one of the few archetypes that have both opposites. Archetypes are bipolar, positive and negative, and so it links the two sides of the archetype in the name itself, which I think is very unusual. Like Sue said, we don't talk about the mother-child archetype. We talk about the mother-child. We talk about the mother archetype and the child archetype separately, and they go together. So it seems to be unique that way. So he did recognize to be an effective healer means to be wounded oneself, and the wounding itself is the agent of healing. He was also the first analyst to insist that analysts themselves be analyzed before practicing. So, and this was later acknowledged by Freud, which led to the whole idea of the training analyst. If you're a psychoanalyst, you're in what's called a training analysis, which means that you're in analysis yourself to uncover and integrate or deal with and know your own woundedness. So Jung says in volume 16, the part we left off of that quote, is, which I think is important, a good half of every treatment that probes at all deeply consists of the doctor examining himself or herself. It is his own hurt that gives the measure of his power to heal. And this is the meaning of the Greek myth of the wounded physician, and this is what we're going to be talking about initially.
In other words, the suffering, the woundedness that those of us, I would say all of us, who are therapists, analysts, have experienced is a kind of rite of passage to want to do the work, to be in the work. And you may wonder, why would I, when we're going to explore, why would we open ourselves effectively day after day after day, and how to stay woundable. That is, it's important to stay in the work with people as if we can be touched. It's very important. We bring all of our feelings to the work, ideally. Jung felt, I believe, humbled by the personal work that he did. He did it over 3 years. He was not alone. He worked with Toni Wolff, whom he had analyzed. And I don't know, he doesn't in the Red Book acknowledge Toni Wolff, but she was a person he was talking to, and in a sense he wasn't doing all this work by himself. There was another person in the room for him to have feedback, to bounce ideas off of, someone who herself became a healer for him, and he allowed that. So I think he was humbled, not only by what was coming up from his own unconscious, but by the need, perhaps, for a therapeutic agent in his life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's a picture of Jung around the time of the Red Book. And we thought we would start out with Jungs Wounds.
Right.
Had a depressed mother who was in and out of the hospital, mental hospital. Father was probably depressed too, suffered a loss of faith. And Jung had we all have divided selves. I mean, the point of analysis is to integrate these parts. It's interesting to know that Winnicott, in his book review of Memories, Dreams, Reflections, he reviewed the book. He labeled Jung he diagnosed Jung with childhood schizophrenia. Of course, Jungians would say that he went on to heal himself with Toni Wolff's help and other people's help and his patients' help. Where he details the early chapters in Memories, Dreams shows, at least to Winnicott, that he had a lot of problems. We could say maybe that he had narcissistic wounding, like many of us do. in his early professional life, Jung was reported to behave, before the Red Book, before the period of the Red Book, we're talking about 1913, 1916, he was reported to be very arrogant, a bully, egotistical, and the Red Book really, like Sue was saying, humbled him. So out of that heroic journey of the Red Book, he and his what he called his creative illness, his woundedness then, came a new humility and deeper insights about the psyche. And he drew on it for the rest of his life, this period. He said it was we called it the prima materia, the primal material for a lifetime, although that woundedness that he suffered went through.
And one of the things he learned from doing his own work is that it wasn't science, it wasn't intellectual understanding that was going to help in his work with patients, but it was emotional. I mean, he found his own work on himself with Tony's help to be an intensely emotional experience. I mean, he was humbled, he was shamed, he bore that, and it took a lot of courage. I mean, he was a pioneer. He didn't know what he was doing. He let the unconscious speak to him and valued it. I mean, had dialogues with it. Out of that came a changed man, and he really affected the field till now, I would say.
Here's a picture that Jung painted. That's the incredible thing for me, I think for a lot of Jungians, to realize how an incredible painter Jung was. I think, isn't there a story that he was going to be a painter before he became a psychiatrist? I don't know. The paintings are amazing in the Red Book.
He did study painting.
He did.
He did.
Painting.
Okay.
He actually studied in France when he was also
In the army.
work with Genet. He also took lessons in art.
Didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Here's one of the paintings from the Red Book, and you know, as we were developing this talk, we thought, well, was there a wounded healer in the Red Book? And we came up with Philemon. Philemon this is a painting of Philemon. Philemon appeared to him as in an active imagination when he was going through this very tumultuous period after his break with Freud. And it's a figure that's borrowed from Greek mythology. It actually means loving and affectionate. But Philemon in Greek mythology is a simple countryman who offers hospitality to Zeus and Hermes when they come to Earth without revealing their identities in order to test people's piety. Anyway, for Jung, this figure was his guru. He named Philemon his guru and his guiding spirit. He had superior insight. He dialogued with Philemon, and through Philemon, he learned that there are things in the psyche that he cannot control, that aren't coming from him. So he learned about a basic tenet that Jungians subscribe to, which is the autonomy of the psyche, of the deep archetypal psyche. Where also Philemon was wounded, which I didn't realize. So here we've got a wounded healer. He has a lame foot, and that's in Memories, Dreams. So here is a wounded healer.
Judith, can you go back to Philemon again?
Painting?
Yeah. Because I just realized, I never looked at this. It's so there's snakes in there.
Yeah.
And that will...
You'll see snakes are going to appear just pretty soon in this talk with Asclepius.
Yes.
Yeah.
He obviously considered Philemon somewhat a healing presence for him.
There's also there's all kinds of associations with this that we got into, like he's a wise old man. He's a spiritual figure. He's got the wings, supposedly, I think it was described in Memories, Dreams, of a kingfisher, which is a bird with bright colored wings. And a fisher king is also a wounded healer in the Arthur legends, or a Holy Grail. So he's a kingfisher wings, but he's also a fisher king, wounded healer. And